Uncle Rourke stood up with his beer like he was about to say something hilarious. He looked directly at me across the Thanksgiving table, the look of someone who had decided on the joke before he'd even sat down. "She lives off others," he announced, loud enough for everyone to hear, loud enough to make sure nobody could pretend they hadn't. A few people laughed, quick, nervous, obedient. The kind of laughter that happened when people didn't know what else to do with what they'd just witnessed. My cheeks burned immediately. My hands went cold around my fork. I looked at Grandma Brina. Her eyes dropped to her plate. Fast. Like she was ashamed on my behalf and couldn't hold my gaze while feeling it. Rourke smirked, watching me, waiting for the reaction he could then point at and call dramatic. I swallowed hard, forced my face completely calm, because in that moment something clicked into place. This wasn't casual, wasn't careless. He wasn't just being thoughtless with a beer in his hand at a holiday table. He was aiming at me, specifically, deliberately. And people who aimed at you specifically had specific reasons for wanting you to look small. I was going to find out what his reason was. "My name is Yara Elowin. I've been the family scapegoat since I was a teenager. The one who got labeled first and defended last. The one people talked about in hallways before they talked to." In the bathroom, I gripped the sink, breathed slowly through the sting behind my eyes, replayed his words. "Lives off others." They sat on my skin like something stamped there, hot and humiliating. When I walked back out, my aunt leaned over and whispered, "Don't take it personally." Personally. He had said my name with it, had looked directly at my face when he said it. I nodded, because I was too tired to explain why that advice was worthless. But inside, my mind was already moving somewhere new. Rourke had chosen tonight to make a public statement about who I was, about what I took from people, about my relationship to other people's resources. He'd said it like he was sure, like he had standing to say it. Like the subject of taking from others was something he understood deeply and personally. And the more I sat with that, the more one question formed. If Rourke was so concerned about who in this family was living off others, what exactly was he looking at so hard when he looked in my direction? The next morning I stopped by Grandma Brina's house. She looked smaller than I remembered. It wasn't dramatic, just the slow, quiet way someone could look smaller when things were weighing on them that they hadn't said out loud yet. In the kitchen, I noticed her pill organizer. Half empty. And not in the way that meant she'd taken what she needed, in the way that meant it hadn't been refilled. "Did you pick up your prescription?" I asked, gently. Brina sighed. "Rourke said he got it," she whispered. My stomach tightened. "When did he say that?" She shrugged. "A while ago." A while ago was not an answer, and when medication was involved, a while ago was dangerous. I drove to her pharmacy with her permission. The pharmacist confirmed the prescription had been picked up. 11 days earlier, someone had it. Brina didn't. I sat in my car afterward with both hands on the wheel, not moving, just breathing. Not because I was jumping to conclusions, because I was looking at a simple, clear, documented fact. The medication was picked up. Brina had none. 11 days had passed. I started a note on my phone. Date, time, what I'd confirmed, what Brina had said. If this was nothing, I would find that out. But I was going to document my way to finding it out. Rourke called me the next afternoon. His voice was cheerful, easy. The voice of a man who considered himself the most reasonable person in any conversation. "I heard you were at Mom's," he said. "Everything okay?" I kept my voice completely even. "Grandma's medication is missing," I said. "The pharmacy shows it was picked up 11 days ago." Silence, brief, then a laugh. "Here we go," he said. Light, warm, like I was doing something predictable and faintly entertaining. "You're always accusing something," he added. Accusing. The word he deployed like a shield. Turn the person asking questions into the problem. Make investigations sound like aggression. "You probably picked it up and forgot to bring it," I said calmly. He laughed again. "She probably lost it. You know how she gets. You know how she gets." About an elderly woman who had been managing her own health for decades. I didn't argue. I said, "We'll get it sorted." And I ended the call. Then I opened my notes. Date, time, what he said, what he didn't say. Because the moment someone called you an accuser for asking a reasonable question, the timeline of what you asked and when became critical. I was building one. 3 days later, Brina showed me a piece of mail with shaking hands. A utility shut-off notice. Water service. Final warning before disconnection. My chest tightened. Rourke was handling this, Brina said. Her voice was small. Embarrassed in the way people got embarrassed about things that weren't their fault. He told you he paid it? I asked. She nodded. A while back. A while back again. I sat with her at the kitchen table and opened the utility account on her laptop. The last payment had been made 5 months ago. The balance owed had climbed steadily since then. 3 past due notices had been sent. Rourke had been listed as the contact for billing correspondence. He had received all 3 past due notices, and none of them had been paid. I paid the minimum balance that evening to stop the disconnection. Kept the payment confirmation on my phone. Screenshot the account balance and the notice. My stomach burned with the specific kind of anger that came from watching someone let a person they claimed to care for get hurt through deliberate inaction. But I kept my face calm for Brina. She needed calm more than she needed my anger right now. I was saving the anger for somewhere it could do something useful. 2 days after I paid the water bill, I stopped at a gas station on my way to work. Rourke was there. He was standing beside a brand new ATV parked at the edge of the lot, grinning the way someone grinned when they were proud of something and wanted people to notice. He saw me, waved big, work hard, play hard. He called across the parking lot. The words landed differently than he intended them to. Work hard. I thought about Brina's shut-off notice, unopened on a counter. 3 months of past due balances ignored while the notices went to his contact email. I thought about the missing prescription, picked up 11 days ago, gone somewhere that wasn't Brina's pill organizer. I thought about the account balance I'd looked at the night before, and I looked at the ATV. Shiny, recent, not cheap. I sat in my car for a minute before going inside. My hands were shaking, not from anger exactly, from the very specific feeling of a pattern becoming visible. The math was starting to show itself. And math didn't care about explanations, it just sat there, adding up. At a family brunch the following weekend, Rourke held court. He did it the way he always did. Warm voice, stories that positioned him at the center. A specific kind of generous energy that made people feel included in whatever he was radiating. I handle all of Mom's finances, he announced to the table. Bills, accounts, all of it. He shook his head slowly. It's a burden, honestly, but someone has to. People praised him genuinely, warmly. Burden, saint, good son. Brina smiled from her seat. The specific smile I'd noticed over the past few months. Weak around the edges. Grateful looking, but also something else underneath it. Afraid looking. Later, when we were alone in the kitchen, she grabbed my wrist gently. Please don't fight with him, she whispered. My throat tightened. I'm not fighting anything, I told her. I'm checking. She nodded, but her eyes stayed worried. I drove home thinking about the difference between those two things. Fighting was loud and emotional and gave the other person something to point at. Checking was quiet and methodical and built something the other person couldn't dismantle. Rourke was very good at handling fighters. I didn't think he'd ever had to handle someone who just quietly kept checking. Brina called me on a Tuesday evening, voice trembling slightly. I don't understand my bank statements, she said. Can you come look? I came the next afternoon. She gave me her login information with shaking hands, like she was nervous about what she was about to see, like she already half knew. I opened the account, scrolled slowly. My stomach dropped by the second page. ATM withdrawals appearing 2 or 3 times a week. Small amounts, $40, $60, $80. Regular enough to be invisible in a given week. Significant when you looked at 4 months together. Transfers labeled MISC. Brief descriptions that didn't match anything in Brina's life. Charges at stores Brina didn't visit. Online purchases she hadn't made. Brina barely drove. She didn't shop online. She ordered her groceries through a delivery service I'd set up for her 2 years ago. None of what I was looking at matched her actual life. I kept scrolling. The cold spread through my chest slowly. Not panic. Something more controlled than that. Someone was draining her. Carefully, gradually. In amounts small enough not to trigger alarm in any single month, but together, undeniable. I closed the laptop gently. Told Brina I needed to look more carefully. I drove home and sat at my kitchen table for a long time. I went back through the statements the following evening. This time I was looking for something specific. Not just the withdrawals, the destination of the transfers. There was an account number attached to the recurring MISC transfers. An external account. Not one of Brina's. I called the bank with Brina present, on speaker, so she could be part of the conversation and authorize what was discussed. I kept my voice calm and professional. Asked the representative what external account the transfers were being directed to. The representative said that account was an external transfer recipient linked to the primary account. They couldn't provide details about the account holder without proper written authorization from the account owner. I wrote down exactly what they said. Brina's voice shook. Who is it? The representative was careful, polite, could not say without the authorization paperwork being filed. I thanked them and ended the call. Then I sat with Brina and explained what we needed to do next. There was an external account receiving her money regularly. I didn't know whose it was yet, but I had a strong and specific suspicion, and I knew exactly who would react with panic the moment I got close to identifying it. I tested the suspicion carefully. A few days later, at a family birthday gathering, I found a moment alone with Rourke near the kitchen. Casual. Easy voice, no accusation. Do you know why Grandma's water bill was so far behind? I asked. I ended up having to pay the shut-off notice. His eyes flashed before his face caught up. Stay out of adult business, he said, sharp, fast. Adult business. Like I was 12. Like managing a shut-off notice for an elderly woman was something I should have let happen instead of intervened. I just want to make sure the bills are covered, I said gently. Rourke laughed, but there was no warmth in it. Look at you, he said, trying to be the hero, after living off everyone your whole life. Living off everyone. Again. Then he stepped closer, lowered his voice. Keep poking around, he said, and the family is going to see what you really are. My hands were shaking when I walked away. Not because I was scared, because I understood now that the threat meant I was close to something. People who were innocent didn't whisper threats when you asked about late bills. I went home and added his words to my timeline. Date, location, what he said verbatim. I found Belen Stroud through a community elder care organization. She was a financial counselor who specialized in elder financial abuse cases. Her name was on a resource page I'd found after 3 nights of searching. I called her and explained the situation in careful general terms. She didn't express surprise. She asked clear questions. Was the elder isolated from other decision-makers? Yes. Had one person positioned themselves as the sole financial manager without formal legal authority? Yes. Were there unexplained withdrawals and unpaid bills alongside apparent new purchases by the person with access? Yes. Belen told me what to gather. Bank statements going back at least 6 months. Utility and bill records. Medication pickup logs. Any documentation of checks or payments made on the elder's behalf. A clear written timeline of who had access to what and when. Do not confront without a complete picture, she said. And do not give the person of concern any signal that formal documentation is happening. I thanked her. Ended the call. Then I opened a new document on my laptop, started building a binder. Tab by tab, page by page, date by date. Each page I added made my hands steadier, because evidence was solid in a way that emotions never were. And I was building something solid. My cousin Petra called me on a Wednesday afternoon. She sounded hesitant. Like she'd been sitting on something for a while and had finally decided to say it. She had sent Grandma Brina a birthday check in September. A generous one. Brina had never mentioned it. Petra had assumed Brina was just bad at acknowledging gifts, hadn't wanted to say anything, but something had been sitting wrong with her. She'd finally looked up the check image through her bank. She sent me the image. The check had been cashed, endorsed on the back. Not in Brina's handwriting. I stared at the photo on my phone for a long time. Brina's signature was something I knew well. I'd helped her fill out forms for years. I knew the particular slant of her letters, the way she wrote her name. The endorsement on this check was not her handwriting. My fingers went numb. Someone had signed Brina's name on a check made out to her, and cashed it. That was not a misunderstanding about bills. That was not a miscommunication about finances. That was a crime. I saved the image, added it to the binder. and felt the folder become something with a different kind of weight. I stayed late at Brina's house one evening, after dinner, after we'd watched some television, after she'd started to relax the way she did when the day was winding down and nobody was going to knock on the door. I asked gently, "Does Rourke ever get angry when you ask questions about the account?" Brina was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded, small, ashamed. "He says I get confused," she whispered. "He says if I ask too many questions, I'll make mistakes and lose everything." My chest tightened. "Does he ever take your card?" Another pause. "He says he'll lose it for me if I keep it," she admitted. I sat very still. He had positioned himself as the protector, the guardian, the only one capable enough to manage what she couldn't handle herself. And that position gave him access. Gave him the ability to make her feel that questions were dangerous, that independence was a risk, that needing him was safety. Brina took my hand. "I'm scared," she said. So quietly, my eyes burned. "You are not going to be alone in this," I told her. And I meant every word of it with everything I had. Rourke turned the family against me that week. Not directly. He was too smart for that. He worked in the way people worked when they wanted to control a narrative without appearing to be managing one. Relatives started texting me. "You're creating stress for Brina. Rourke is doing the best he can. Why are you making this harder than it needs to be?" I wanted to explain everything. Wanted to send screenshots and bank statements and ask them to look at what I was looking at. Instead, I replied to each one with a single sentence. "I'm making sure Brina's bills are paid and her medication is safe." Safe. That one word. I chose it deliberately, because no reasonable person could argue against safety. And anyone who did argue against it revealed something about what they were actually protecting. The responses that came back were instructive. Some relatives went quiet. A few pushed back with more complaints about my attitude. And 2 of them privately sent me messages that said some version of, "I've been wondering too. What are you finding?" I added those names to a separate list. People who might be willing to look clearly when the time came. Belen walked me through the authorization process. We filed the proper paperwork with Brina's bank to allow the identification of the external account receiving transfers. It took 9 days. The confirmation letter arrived on a Thursday. I picked it up from Brina's mailbox and sat in my car before opening it. Took one breath. The external account receiving recurring transfers from Brina's account was linked to a registered phone number. The phone number matched Rourke's. I sat in my car for a long time after reading that, not surprised. I'd known. The logic of everything I'd been building had pointed here clearly for weeks. But knowing and confirming were different things. Suspicion could still be wrong, could still be misread, could still have explanations I hadn't considered. This was not suspicion anymore. This was a bank document with a phone number match in black ink. I was past the point of maybe. I was past the point of perhaps and probably and I think. I photographed the letter. Placed the original carefully in a protective sleeve. Added it to the binder behind the bank statements. And drove to Belen's office to talk about what came next. Rourke called me 4 days later, voice warm, conversational. The voice of someone who didn't know what I'd confirmed yet. "Brina needs work on the gutters," he said. "And there's a plumbing thing. I'm collecting money from the family for repairs. Send me your share, and I'll handle it." I held the phone. Let the silence sit for exactly 2 seconds. "No," I said, "just that. Simple. Clean." Silence on his end. A different quality of silence from usual. "Excuse me," he said finally. "If Brina needs repairs," I said calmly, "I'll contact the contractors directly and pay the invoices myself." His voice changed completely. The warmth evaporated. "You think you're clever," he said. I didn't answer. "You are a leech," he said, sharp, certain. "You always have been, everyone knows it." Leech. The irony was so specific and precise, it almost felt surreal. The man whose phone number was attached to transfers from his elderly mother's account. Calling me a leech. I ended the call. Added the time and content to my timeline. Then I sat for a while with the binder open in front of me, and thought about what form the next step needed to take. Belen walked Brina and me through a series of protective changes. We changed Brina's debit card. The new one went directly to Brina, not through Rourke, not sent to an address he had access to. We set up transaction alerts on her phone. Every purchase, Every withdrawal, every transfer would generate an immediate notification. We set a daily withdrawal limit, and we changed the authorized contacts on the account. Removed Rourke's name, added mine, with Brina's explicit, written consent, notarized and on file. Brina sat through all of it with a kind of exhausted attention, like someone doing something difficult that they were relieved to finally be doing. At the end, she looked at me. "He's going to be angry," she said. I nodded. "Yes. Very angry." She added. "I know," I said. I reached over and put my hand over hers. "Let him," I said quietly. Even as I said it, I felt the weight of what was coming. Because Rourke losing access wouldn't be quiet. Wouldn't be graceful. The people who took slowly and carefully and over a long period of time were not the people who let go without a scene. I was prepared for the scene. I just needed Brina to be protected enough to survive it. The scene came on a Saturday morning. I was at Brina's when Rourke pulled up outside. He didn't knock. He walked in the way he'd always walked in. Like the house belonged to him. Like permission was an unnecessary step. His face showed everything the moment he looked at Brina. "Why can't I access the account?" he demanded. Not hello. Not is everything okay. Not I was worried. Just the account. Immediately. Brina's hands started shaking. I stepped between them. Kept my voice completely level. "Because the account belongs to Brina," I said. His face turned red. "You did this," he said, pointing at me. "You're poisoning her against her own son." "I helped her set up protections on her own money," I said. "You are ruining this family," he shouted. Neighbors' curtains moved. Brina started crying quietly behind me. Very soft, very small. Rourke pointed at me and said it again, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. "She lives off others. She always has." I looked at him steadily. "Leave?" I said. He laughed bitterly. "Make me." I reached for my phone. "I will," I said quietly. He looked at the phone, looked at my face, and for the first time something shifted in his expression. Not remorse. Just the recognition that the rules of this situation had changed. That evening I called Belen, told her about the confrontation, the shouting, Brina's reaction, the way he'd behaved in the home. Belen said something I'd been circling for days. "If you have confirmed financial exploitation and an incident of intimidation in the elder's home, you are within clear grounds to file a report with Adult Protective Services. Filing a report against family." I sat with that for a long time after we hung up. There was a part of me that resisted it. Not because I thought I was wrong, but because doing it made something permanent. Crossed a line that didn't uncross. Then I looked at the photograph of that endorsed check on my phone. Looked at Brina's bank statement with the recurring transfers. Thought about her pill organizer, half empty. Her shaking hands. Her whisper. "I'm scared." I drove to her house. Sat with her at her kitchen table and explained what I wanted to do and why. Brina was quiet for a long time. "I don't want trouble," she whispered. I took her hand. "I want safety," I said. We filed the report together. Factual, documented, calm. When I hit submit, my hands shook, not with guilt, with grief that it had come to this at all. The next family gathering was a cousin's engagement party. Rourke arrived like he owned the room, the way he always had. But something was different now. He'd lost account access. He knew a report had been filed. He didn't know exactly what I had documented, but he could feel the shift, could feel that the ground beneath his version of events was less stable than it had been. So he did what he did when he felt control slipping. He performed. "Yara's been attacking me," he announced to a small cluster of relatives near the drinks table, loud enough to carry. "After everything I do for this family, I manage Mom's whole situation, and she's been going around trying to destroy my reputation." People murmured, some sympathetic, some uncertain. I sat nearby and said nothing. Because I was done arguing at informal gatherings where he set the tone and controlled the room's emotional temperature. I was saving my words. Every word I had was being saved for the moment when facts couldn't be interrupted. When documentation was on a table in front of people. When the truth was visible and dated and too specific to dismiss as drama. That moment was coming. Rourke announced a family meeting. He sent a group message, formal in its framing, serious. "We need to have a real conversation about Mom's care as a family. I'm calling a vote on how things should be handled going forward." A vote. His word. His idea. He sent it because he thought he controlled the room. Thought that if he set the stage, he'd own the outcome. Thought that a vote meant an audience he could perform his version of events for. My stomach tightened when I read it. Then I thought about what I had in my binder, and I replied simply, "I'll be there." Rourke sent a thumbs up. The confidence of a man who thought he'd won something. He didn't know what I'd been building. Didn't know about the confirmation letter with the account linked to his phone number. Didn't know about Petra's check image. Didn't know about the 6-month statement comparison, or the prescription pickup log, or the utility shutoff timeline. He'd called a vote because he thought votes were about who spoke most convincingly. I was about to show him what a vote looked like when one person brought the facts and the other person only had performance. I prepared until midnight the night before. I was ready. The night before the meeting, I spread everything across my kitchen table. Binder open, tabs visible, bills, bank, meds, checks, threats, timeline, each section organized in chronological order. No emotional language, just dates and amounts and confirmed facts. I practiced the way I was going to present it. Short sentences, clear, no visible anger, no wavering. Belen had coached me on this. The moment you appear emotional, the story shifts to your emotional state instead of the evidence, she'd said. Stay flat. Let the documents be loud. Let the documents be loud. That was what I kept coming back to. My friend Sable texted at 11 p.m. You okay? I looked at the binder, the summary page on top. One printed page showing a simple comparison. Funds withdrawn from Brina's account over 6 months versus bills that had gone unpaid during the same period. The numbers sat beside each other like an accusation that didn't need a voice. I typed back, "I'm steady." And for the first time in months of shaking hands and tight chests and middle-of-the-night documentation sessions, I meant it completely. The binder was ready. I was ready. Tomorrow, the room would have to see what I had been seeing for months. Rourke opened the family meeting standing. Like a pastor. Like he'd been called to address a congregation. He looked directly at me. "We need to talk about certain people in this family," he said, "who have been taking advantage while others carry the weight." His eyes stayed on me. Some people live off others, and we're going to address that today. A few people looked uncomfortable. A few nodded. I didn't react. I stood slowly, calm on the surface, completely still underneath. "Since we're discussing who's been taking from others," I said, "I brought documentation." I placed the binder on the table. The sound was small, just paper on wood, but it was the kind of small sound that landed in a room and changed the air. Rourke laughed, loud, dismissive. "Drama," he said, the word he always reached for. The word that was supposed to make everything I did look like a performance. I opened to the first tab, Brina's water shutoff notice, date printed clearly at the top, final warning. Beside it, a bank statement showing a withdrawal of $60 from Brina's account on the same date the bill payment would have been due. The room went quiet. Someone whispered, "Wait." Rourke's smile tightened. "Before anyone votes," I said, steady and even, "I'd like everyone to look at the facts." I moved through the binder like I was going through a presentation at work. Tab by tab. Calm. Factual. Short sentences. The prescription pickup log from the pharmacy. Medication picked up. Brina's organizer empty a week later. The bank statements showing 6 months of withdrawals and missed transfers totaling an amount that made someone across the table draw a sharp breath. The confirmation letter. The external account linked to transfers from Brina's account. The phone number match. Petra's check image. The endorsement on the back, not Brina's handwriting. And the text messages. Rourke asking me to send money to him for Brina's repairs. Dated. Screenshotted. Preserved. Faces changed around the table. Confusion first, the look of people trying to fit what they were seeing with what they'd believed. Then disbelief. Then something harder and quieter. Rourke stood. "That's completely out of context," he said. Loud, certain, but context was printed in dates and dollar amounts on pages in front of them. Then Brina spoke, small voice shaking but clear. He told me I would lose everything without him managing it for me. Silence fell, complete and absolute. An aunt looked at Rourke slowly. "Did you take her money?" she asked. Rourke's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No laugh came. Belen stepped forward, calm as still water. "This pattern," she said, "is consistent with documented financial exploitation of an elder." The word exploitation sat in the room like smoke, and every pair of eyes shifted away from me and onto him, where they should have been all along. I didn't demand anything dramatic. I asked one question, simple and direct. Who should manage Brina's finances going forward? Someone with unchecked access and no oversight, or a protected system with full transparency that Brina controls? The vote wasn't loud, wasn't theatrical. It was just quiet people making a clear choice when the facts had been placed in front of them. Rourke lost management of Brina's finances. Brina kept her autonomy, with safeguards, with alerts. With documented oversight, she had chosen herself. Rourke stood and said everyone had betrayed him. Said it loudly, said it in the direction of the door as he walked toward it. Nobody followed. I took Brina home that evening, made her tea, tucked a blanket around her in her chair because the evenings had started getting cold. She looked at me with tired eyes. "I'm sorry they believed him for so long," she whispered. My throat tightened. "People believe the loudest voice in the room," I said, "until someone puts the truth somewhere visible." In the months that followed, I built my life forward, a better position at work, my own apartment, visits to Brina on Sunday afternoons because I loved her and because peace was worth protecting. Rourke called me a freeloader at a Thanksgiving table, but the man everyone in that family now associated with taking from others was not me. It had never been me. And now nobody could pretend otherwise.